I'm excited to bring on the next speaker. I'm going to talk about Daniela, talk about being aware of the environment, what our consumers value. Daniela, let's see if we can get, Daniela, can you raise your, are you on camera? There you are, woman. Hey.
Hi there. Hi, Angela.
Good to see you. Do you remember when we had our birthday party at the same time years ago?
Oh yeah, I do. At in the East Village.
Yes.
Great party.
Yes, lots of fun, great people there too, right? And look at where you are now. I love when my classmates have moved on to some beautiful places. You're now at BMW, Head of Sustainability Design, and would love for you to tell us, and not just at BMW, but you've been lecturing and helping lots of businesses understand how to build the mission of sustainability within those companies, right?
Yeah, in a way, yeah.
I mean, you teach it by how you guys are doing it at BMW, right? So
yeah. Well, the teaching is something which is definitely something I do by heart. Also, not only the teaching, but also changing the curriculum at the universities towards more sustainability in design. And I think that is the most important thing, that they come up with a good education. So the young students challenge us old guys in the design with these new questions they ask.
I love it. I love it. Well, then with that, let you have the floor, woman. Good to see you and glad for you to join us today.
Thank you so much. So now I try to figure out this technology, and I hope I'm successfully disappearing.
Let's see if you hit your share screen button and the green button in the middle of the bottom. Yes.
Okay. I still have to start that here. This has to disappear. Okay. Wow. I think I share my first slide here.
Yes, we see it perfectly, Daniela.
Perfect. I'm on. Thank you so much for having me to this conference. I'm extremely excited. I have a whole day behind me already. I'm sitting in Munich, Germany, but I will talk a little bit about that in my story. Yeah, I was just listening to this fashion panel, and this is super interesting for me too, because we all work a lot with materials. And also we do a lot of stuff on supply chain management and certifications and a transparency. So this is, I think, pretty interesting now to jump in a whole different industry. You jump into the car industry. And I want to take you on my personal journey, how I actually established this position as head of sustainability in the design department in this kind of huge corporation. So let me take you to my journey. Well, I call it 180 degrees because that's what happened to me. The future is uncertain, and we all know that the automotive industry is facing many issues. Our products provide pleasure, but we are also sometimes in the firing line when it comes to the environment and even exploitation. So let me explain how we are much more than just a car manufacturer. So as I said, I come from Munich, Bavaria, and work with BMW Group, what we call now a premium innovative tech company. So we are providing mobility. Not only we are building cars, and that's something we changed over the years, but of course BMW is well known for its luxurious cars, but we have also great to ride motorbikes. And so let me show you a little bit about our history. So BMW celebrated its 100th birthday a couple of years ago, but we are always looking forward, eager to develop the most, innovative and aesthetic cars. and provide future mobility for the world. And what I mean with future mobility is, of course, also all kind of shared cars. We have a lot in Europe, I think some of them also in the US, in particular bigger cities like San Francisco, I think, and now Seattle and Portland. That's also one part of this whole aspect of future mobility at BMW. But the problem is that we do have a really long tradition, and our success is being based on thinking ahead and overcoming challenges. Our focus is firmly on the future, and our vision is to be the most sustainable car company in the world. And when I talk about the future thinking, and I think that's interesting when you come from the fashion industry, like today I was talking, I just had a meeting and we were talking about what happened when we do that. We have to make the decision within this or next year to get the transformation 2045. So this is really a far ahead step, but that would mean we develop cars in a period of like I have 7 years on developing, and then the car gets into the market, and then it's in the market for another, like say 12 to 15 years, unless we get the car possibly back or we see the car again. So that's a really, really long time span. You have to think ahead when it comes to design. I work with BMW since 18 years now. I think our history was showing that we did a lot of quite right. But of course, there's always space for improvement. And from 2009 on, I spent 5 years working on what we call the Project I. That was a holistic, sustainable approach to future mobility, which led in these two cars. You see here below, the black one is the i3, and the upper one is the i8. It's a plug-in hybrid vehicle, the i8, and i3 is a total 100% electric. And I will take you a little bit on that journey, because especially for the i3, we thought about a whole new way of what I call purpose-driven and material-driven design. Because we approached the whole thing holistically from the origin of the materials, the energy we need to build the cars, the life cycle, and the end-of-life strategies, the whole team was challenged to get the most out of their field of expertise. And the whole team means the design team, as well as all the engineers, all the life cycle assessments, the guys who build up the plans. We looked in every small detail. But I'm going to take you on my journey. For example, we used a kind of hibiscus to substitute plastic. And we developed then the plastic to make the dashboard out of it. The new plastic hibiscus mix to make the dashboard out of it. We developed a yarn from plastic bottles, from these PET bottles on the right side, for textiles. And we used old ghost nets for the carpet and the roof linings. One interesting task was to find a material for the seats which has inherently properties, warm in winter and dry in summer, and no need for extra heating and energy, because that would drain the electric batteries. And since you guys in fashion, you know exactly what I'm talking about, it's wool. But wool is not really a material you use in the car industry. And for the i3, it was just perfect, because we were so concerned about our electric power we have in the car that we thought about turning off all the heatings so that you have still a warm but you still have the whole range of power you wanted. So when we did our first test ride, 4 designers in the car, we were really concerned that we don't reach our where we wanted to go to. So we didn't turn on the heater, we didn't turn on the radio, and we tried to sit warm on our wool seats. But that's, well, of course, it was no need for that, but it was really funny when we tried that. So now I'm gonna take you a little bit to the journey of what my business is now, because this experience and the growing knowledge of what makes an impact really made me change my view from the classic design approach. It totally shifted my perspective on design. Yes, I'm pretty aware of our planet's situation, the challenges and the restrictions. But for me, a challenge is always an opportunity. And it's not only me, of course, it's the whole company who has this view. And there are particularly a lot of people who are going in the same direction. We have a huge team on people who work on sustainability in all kinds of fields. And this helped me a lot. I started what we call a Submarine Project. For a whole year, I went, well, what you call, you're gonna go down, you're gonna go under the water, nobody can see you, and you start developing your idea. You establish the position, what you want to be. And I wanted to become head of sustainability design. So, well, they looked at me and they said, well, how do you want to do it? And I said, okay, first of all, we have to cover up all brands. And we do have BMW as the brand. Then BMW is also Mini, and BMW is also Rolls-Royce. And then we have the motorbike. So I said, if you're going to do a sustainability strategy, we have to do it for all. You need to cover up all these brands. So I said, I want to make a measurable impact. And then, of course, they told me, well, how you want to do it and how do you want to measure it? So they said, okay, you're going to go back to your submarine, and you have to come back to do another presentation on that. So I did that. The board of design sent me back, and then I was showing up twice to really convince them that I have, first of all, developed a measurement system for the impact of sustainability in design, to align it with the management goals and also to align it with all the measurement indications in big corporations. That's how you actually set up goals. So the idea of this whole process took me 3 years, but it was worth it. So finally, after my last successful presentation, I designed my own position in the company. And now I had the opportunity to change a system into something which I would call sustainable design. Since I work at the heart of BMW, the design studio, I can change something 180 degrees now, directly at the beginning of the product development where I position myself. And I think that's super important. You have to position yourself in the early phase where you actually think of the product, think of everything which happens where you draw the first line. And sustainability has also to be part of the definition of the DNA, what I call the DNA of the product. It has to be part of the first discussion in the first line, as I said. Otherwise, it's really difficult to add it. And as we know, it's not the lack of knowledge that's the challenge. It's more you need someone who is totally on track minded, who is always starting the conversation and keeping sustainability at the forefront of thinking. Someone who is challenging people to think and work differently to take a further step towards change. Because we can change a lot, designers have an impact of around 80% of the final product when it comes to sustainability. And for our example is, in my case, for the car industry is, for example, aerodynamics or the material choice, which decides immediately the tooling of the car, as well as the weight. But every strategy, call it sustainability or eco-positive, has to be driven not only from top down, but also from bottom up. So what I did, I took the chance to work with our strategic department to develop our new sustainability next strategy 2030. And to make sure that we at design really understand what we have to do. After all, well-meaning strategies sometimes seem to fly a little bit too high, for the people who are on the bottom. And that's what my boss told me. He said, translate this kind of strategy into actual doing for design. My industry, like so many other industries, must use its power to change the way we do things. We have to look at materials we need, the waste we generate, the supply chains we use. And that's exactly what you just mentioned before. And that's what we do as well. And we have to do it, and we do it. Well, let me give some insights in what I mean with sustainable design. And I want to show you a little bit by easy examples on what I do. So let's imagine all this Lego bricks, and the colors stand for a mix of different materials and properties in a car. So I would like to ask you now a question, but I think I can't. That would mean I would like to know, guess you how many materials we have in a car. If you would sit in front of me, you could raise your hand. I will let you know. It's 10,000 materials in a car, up to. Well, it depends on the car. It depends on the size as well. But it's between 8,000 and 10,000 materials, different materials. So first, when you look at all these materials, you have to actually look at all them in detail. So we have first to separate all the materials and understand what kind of materials we have. So the next question I ask normally, is it recyclable? Can we reuse it? What's the end of life strategy of this material? Do we have a plan? Do we know who actually can recycle that? The next really important part is we have to look at ourselves under what kind of circumstances do we source our materials? Do we know our supply chains? Can we get certified materials? If not, who can certify them? And I think the beauty of working in a huge corporation is that we do have a department who is actually only looking in supply chain management. And we do cooperations, for example, with the kenaf, which is harvested in Bangladesh. And we did certify the whole supply chain up to the farmer, just to make sure that this is always coming in the same quality and also with fair price. And we actually went deeply into, really, we went down and talked to the farmers and helped them to create a fair supply chain. So I want to go back to when we talk about separating materials. The next thing big we can do is simply reduce. So when we talk about 10,000 materials, today actually I was pledging for less materials. We have to reduce the amount of different materials in our products. Sometimes they're not necessary. Sometimes they're just there because they make a design variation. And you really have to rethink if this is important. But you also have to reduce the amount of different materials or pieces or functions, because I think sometimes we really over-design material products. So then I want to show you the next possibility, and it could be the question, do we really need that particular material, or can we substitute it with something better? So sometimes you might see that there's a lack of quality in the, or there's a material which is overperformed in the product, but you might like it because it's beautiful. So I would recommend you to really re-question all that. So maybe we can have the same material qualities from naturally occurring, or as I mentioned before, from recycled content. What does the design really need to fit all needs? For example, I saw a table on the furniture fair in Milano last year, and it was made out of carbon fiber. Well, it's perfectly lightweight, but why do I need a table which is lightweight and has a huge carbon footprint? So for me, this does not really make any sense. It's just fashion. Well, sorry to say, but it's just a show-off thing. It's just fancy. So I'm not really happy about that stuff. So what we actually did with the i3, we used carbon because we needed it lightweight. So, and finally, the best principle of all is simply reduce. What doesn't get used or built doesn't have a carbon footprint. So the idea should be to use less material, to reduce complexity, and to aim for a minimal footprint. So my approach is understand the materials and then evolve from here. Find different creative solutions. For example, right now we use more and more floor mats made from ocean plastic. And then we're going to reduce all the complexity of materials to have a mono material so we can actually easily recycle it. And that's a project we have done, and it's successful and it's beautiful. So we are so happy to have this one floor mat, which is in every car 4 times, just to make easy recyclable. So don't underestimate the impact that sorts of things can have when it comes to the customer. The customer is asking for it, or it's actually expecting your sustainability approach because you are a big brand. So that's what we figured. People think we're gonna create solutions for them. So when they buy a car, they don't want to buy a problem. They want to buy a perfect solution. So we want to also know, and I think that's something as well, to have to make your sustainability approach in a way that customer can see it, that you can talk about it. You need to create a story about it. Otherwise, you do a lot of effort and nobody will hear about it. So yeah, now I talked a lot about what you should do, and you would say, well, it's nice, I know all that, but my experience of innovation and change is that we need a big financial investment to start with. Sustainability costs more. Sure, I would say maybe. This investment is paying directly into the insurance that helps you still be a player in the industry in the future. Why? Because we know by now that certain materials, energy, and general resources are limited, and there will be new regulations coming. Every day I do have to face the same question. Who is paying for that? We do not have any extra money for sustainability. So is the investment really too expensive? Certainly not. We have to understand that the desire and move to an eco-conscious company will take years and has to be carried by the conviction of the whole company, from evolution to revolution. So now maybe you think, right, I know all of that. Well, that's what I said in the beginning. But if we know all of that, why don't we apply it? Start with simple changing one of the parameters. And of course, I've often asked myself, can I still work in an industry which is per se attached to a negative impact, where mobility of the future is still not only a service? So I was asking myself if I should move on, and I discussed it a lot with Angela. So now, after being part of this for the last 18 years, I can say that with every new product, my work has an impact. Say 2.1 million cars every year. That's a lot smaller change adding up to a big change. Thank you so much. So I am
Daniela, that was a great presentation. Thank you. Mare, good to see you.
I'm going to ask a couple of the questions, Daniela. Thank you, as Ange said, for walking us through your journey. That is really unbelievable. So many comments on Slack about, you know, how amazing that you were able to kind of draft and create your own position and then move yourself into it. That's really very admirable. I love what you were saying about how sustainability can't be an afterthought, obviously not, especially with something as complex as automobile design. So why would you say it's so important that we start with sustainability from that first line at BMW?
Well, it's not only at BMW. I think in every industry, as soon as you start thinking of designing a new product, a new garment or whatever, you have to start questioning the materials. So when I always say, if you draw just a radius or if you draw a line that indicates material you want to use. So I think the most important thing is you really have to understand first what material you want to use, and then work through the material into the shape. So otherwise you might not be able, well, what I figure a lot, or what I experience a lot, is that we're going to use, for example, wood in the interior for the decor panels. But sometimes the decor panels are designed so worse for like really using this material, this sheet material. So the material is breaking all the time and you have a lot of waste. So that's what I mean with when you think of the shape, the connection with the material, and then also, and then you have to marry this idea. And that's why I think in the first place, starting with it.
Very cool. Yeah, obviously there's a symbiotic relationship there. I mean, I feel like at this point you probably have a doctorate in material science after you've gone through all 10,000 materials in an automobile that have to be like researched for their, you know, supply chain impact and things like that. You know, when you were, where did you have to start when you were trying to build up this position for yourself? It sounds like you were you always in a sustainability capacity, or were you more design and then you kind of gravitated towards sustainability?
Well, exactly. So I missed that part where it came from, but originally, well, I'm a product designer, and I turned, when I moved to the car industry, to become a material color and trim designer, what we call it, material. Yeah. And so I was there for developing regular materials for the interior and designing the seat and developing leather. But what really made me shift this whole idea is when we start having bigger and bigger cars, and another height of leather had to go inside and another height. And then I said, I start wondering if this is the right way. And that's why I said I started 2009 with the i3, because this project was designed for really re-questioning it. The whole system, this was designed for thinking sustainability. And I just said to myself, because I was curious about this whole sustainability topic, I knew that I know a lot, but of course I was reading a lot and I talked a lot to people. And I figured out that we never called it sustainability in the 80s or in the 90s, but it was just there. I mean, we were just working conscious and responsible, or yeah. So that's when I really grabbed on that and really started defining new questions to the manufacturers, suppliers, and re-question the material itself. Yeah.
Yeah,
so I come from the material side. Yeah, sorry.
Got it. I love the example that you gave about pulling plastic out of the ocean to use for floor mats. I mean, you know, like I don't know if is that communicated on your website? Like, is that a stat that is kind of marketed?
Communication. Well, that's what I said. I mean, communication is so important, and we did so much with these car, and we don't really talk about it. That's why
It's phenomenal.
Sorry?
It's almost like if you're driving a BMW, you're cleaning up the oceans, you know? It's like you're doing your part.
It would be great if this is a kind of like feeling the customer would have in just buying a floor mat and would say, hey, this is a ghost net. This is an abundant ghost net, which it was digged out of the ocean, and it's now my floor mat. I mean, the fashion industry is doing it quite a lot, and we have a lot of brands who work already with these materials. So it's not too far.
Yeah, no, Rob mentioned in the fashion panel about, you know, Patagonia, I think, is a brand that does such a good job of communicating all of their ecological sort of initiatives. But yeah, that's really fascinating. I love that example. For you, what do you have to bring to be the most successful in your position? What's your biggest asset in your role?
Well, I think you have to first of all be very good connected to a lot of people. That's one thing, because the journey is you change people. You change the situation. So I call myself more a change agent than a sustainability manager. Of course, cool. I develop goals, but sustainability has to be, first of all, it has to be embedded also in your thought. And how can you get people to change if they're not intrinsically motivated to do it. So you have to find a spot, a sweet spot with all of these people where you can actually get them. What I do a lot, I talk a lot with them beforehand, before I want something, to see how I can grab them on their, like, what is their responsibility side, or what are they already thinking and doing, and then I refer to what they can do in the work. Sometimes people leave their brain when they actually enter work, or their consciousness or their responsibility. They do a lot at home, and then they come to work, and then they do what they always did. So what I think my strength is that I can convince them, and I take them with me. I'm also try to be a very good example on living sustainable. So it's sometimes hard, but I try it.
What's an example of how you kind of are living that in your life? Like, what's if you want to share?
The simplest thing is I didn't own a car until last year, and I'm biking to work every day.
Wow.
So that's one thing. I'm not really buying stuff too much. I'm doing a lot of secondhand stuff, and I talk about it.
Yeah.
I live. I mean, I enjoy my life, and I use products, but so I take care of my own food. We harvest a lot in the garden, and I talk about it, and I show that, and I tell them, hey, you can do it.
Yeah, and
So,
letting people know it's possible. That's great. You're like the living example. That's awesome. We have a couple questions from the audience, so I would love to kind of pitch those to you as well. We have someone curious about the organization and culture of BMW that invited and allowed for you to take this 3-year, time frame or process of designing your role and figuring out how it would actually function within the organization. What was the size of the team she needed to implement? Okay, so it's a long one, but I think they want to understand, like, how you were given this kind of like almost like freedom to have such a long time frame to formulate your role, or was it, maybe you explain.
that was the add-on time I did.
Okay.
It took me 3 years, but I had to do my normal job. It was extra time I had to spend to do my Submarine Project.
Okay.
But of course, I told my boss that I want to do that, and he said, yeah, he said, as long as my work is not suffering, I can do whatever I want.
Great.
So that's I think how I did it. But he also, and I asked him, he has to give me the platform. So he has to help me, to connect me to the board of design. Otherwise, I mean, why would they listen to me? So he had to open the door for me.
Yeah, and did he give you, the question also asked about a team that you were, you obviously needed a team to implement some of these changes or to do some of the...
Actually not.
No?
I do that alone. But I don't do it alone because, first of all, as I said, you really need to connect a lot.
Yeah.
My personal conviction is that if you have a team, a big team in the department, every designer would look at the team and they have to solve the problem. So, this is exactly what happens the last 5 years. They would always say, oh, Daniela is doing that. She is head of sustainability, so she takes care of sustainability. And what now is that I pray all the time that the brands have to do it. The designer himself has to change. So I do workshops, I explain them how to do it, I give guidelines, and more people start changing. And what I did recently, I assigned in every department one person, or got assigned to be sustainability head of this brand. So now we're gonna gather, and I share strategy, and I share what I think we have to do. And now they're gonna connect and take the energy from each other. So what I was convinced of is I have to get it into each brand and into the designers' heads, rather than me having a department of 12 people. And then I have to do everything. So, and I wanted to enable them, and that works very well.
That's great. That goes back to your point earlier about being this change agent, and you're kind of like teaching them all how to fish, right? So you're growing
Exactly.
that mindset.
If you want more fish, it's not exactly teach them how to fish. Yeah.
Very cool. We have a couple more minutes, but we have a question from Mark, and he's asked if safety ever blocks your attempts to be sustainable, and have you ever been told no because a material cannot meet safety standards?
Yes, a lot. Actually, all the time. But that's another thing where I say, first of all, well, there are certain requirements. And the requirements you have to fulfill in car industry, well, there are tons. I mean, I guess there's no more product which has more than that, maybe interior design or stage design. But there is no for me. So I would say, then please reframe the requirement or, the standard. So what kind of standard do you use to tell me that this material is probably dangerous or so? And we figure out that a lot of that stuff, all these standards, they're coming from the 80s. Have never been changed. And I think that is totally worth really setting a question mark to all this kind of requirements which come up to you. A lot of that stuff is not applying to our future designs we actually do.
Yeah, it's kind of antiquated. It's interesting.
Materials change a lot. We have new materials. They don't even need these requirements anymore.
Interesting. Very interesting. We have one more from Morgan. What change have you been able to implement thus far that you were the most proud of?
That sustainability now is part of our presentation always to the board. So we have exterior, interior, and color and trim presentation, and now sustainability is on top of all that. So they have to report on their impact on sustainability, what they did in design, to the board, and I think that is exactly what I wanted to see. When I started, I said, if this is there, I can go. Then they understand exactly what they have to do.
You're like, my work is done.
Exactly. Let's move on.
I have a question about the cradle to grave aspect of sustainable design and how that might work within BMW. I know that, like it's so hard, you can't really tell a customer to go and take apart and disassemble a car that has 10,000 materials in it and recycle it. So is that a responsibility that BMW takes on as an organization?
I love you for that question. I love you for that question. This is my final question. I can end up with my baby, circular economy. Yeah, we are deeply in the circular economy topic at the moment. So we really, we talk to Ellen MacArthur Foundation, we talk to IKEA, we do a lot of exchanging with the big corporations. At the moment, we really go deep into the car and to see how we can actually design the car totally new to make it disassembling, to make the disassembling easy, to reduce the quality of the materials. It is a huge project which is led under the head of sustainability. And as I said, we talk about 2045. Which means that is the earliest time we're going to get these cars back who are actually designed for circularity.
Oh, wow.
And also, we just talked about all the suppliers. The industry is not really ready for all this circularity topics at the moment. We need to create a need for the materials we need, for recycled plastic, for recycled aluminum or steel. And also we need the industry to really go with us in these big cycles. But we're gonna go that way. We just committed, that's why I had to shift my spot from the early morning to the afternoon. That was exactly the decision we just made. Head of design said we're gonna commit ourselves to circular economy.
Wonderful, congratulations.
It is a long way now, but-
It's an exclusive, guys, this is great.
Yeah, ending on a very positive note. Well, yeah, I think we're probably coming to the close, but Daniela, thank you so much. What an inspiring change agent you are, and such a great inspiration for sustainability. And yeah, look forward to seeing you later today for the happy hour. And thanks for sharing your journey with us.
Thank you so much for letting me telling you my journey. Bye-bye.
Bye.